Hello and a big warm welcome to you, and welcome to the Marion Rose podcast. My name's Marion Rose, funnily enough. And today I am back to continue the series that I am creating about the Marion Method. And as always, if you're familiar with my work, you know that I'm passionate about being here exactly as I am in my home environment, actually in my bedroom, because of my house setup, and my lovely mum, 94 years old, lives in my living room. My daughter lives just over there. My son lives just down in the granny flat. There are not other places to be that are quiet-ish, and it won't even be quiet here. There will be dogs snoring. There will be wild welcome swallows flying. And so for me, one of the ways that I have got free from what I call disconnected domination culture conditioning, which is one of the core aims, I would say, not aims, one of the core elements of the Marion Method, is increasingly being who we really are, doing what we're here to do in an interconnected web of life. So for me, I really enjoy not being in a studio with some kind of pretend environment. This is my environment. I have the big doors open so the birds can come in and out. That means there's noises. I don't have a microphone anymore, because what I really want is for you to experience what you would experience if we were just hanging out in person together in the actual world, in the actual embodied, physical, beautiful world. So given that this is the second episode that I'm sharing, the first one was about my own journey with the Marion Method, and this one is really, really important, an important episode for me, because this is about my learning lineage. This is about the four main streams, and I do want to name, of course, I've been influenced by so much more than these four streams. So many books I've read, people I've met, mentees I've worked with, therapists and mentors I've had, so many other things, of course. And these are the four main influences that have profoundly shaped this set of maps and models and practices and processes. And to me, one of the elements of the disconnected domination culture, which is a term I created, inspired by one of my teachers, is to consciously take things from others and not to acknowledge them. That's part of that kind of extraction culture. And so for me, it's really important to me to name, to acknowledge, to appreciate, and to invite you, if you do feel called to learn any more about any of these four beautiful paradigms, that you have the information. So if there's a part of the Marion Method that you particularly resonate with, and then you hear me share, oh, well, that part was deeply influenced by one of these four maps, that then you can go back to that source. And to me, that's part of reconnecting back in with what the DDC has stripped out, which is lineage and ancestors, and really honouring where we've come from, where our ancestors. If you think about the DDC and how ancestors and elders and where we actually got something from is so often just stripped away. So in as much as I'm able at this point in my own journey, I really I'm so willing to name these four streams, the streams of the wells of which I have drunk and for which I'm forever grateful. So if you've listened to or watched the last episode, you will have heard about my journey and my calling, my longing, what I was really wanting from the 9-year-old me who was looking at the cupboard in my kitchen when I was growing up and had that first experience of being aware of myself. For that, also that child me who read Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Bach and felt a deep sense of resonance and understanding. And I imagine you will find the same in your own life as you reflect back. These points that are so, I'm going to say seared, do I want to say seared? So poignant for us, made such a, I actually will say made such a mark, or where we felt this connection with something deeper, that they're so often in our memories, or mine are in my mind, as if that just happened 5 minutes ago or yesterday. These points of deep meaning and purpose, like breadcrumbs of meaning that we follow and that we can look back and see. I wonder if you notice that in your own life, these moments that you remember as if they were yesterday, and that were such a way marker in your soul's journey. So, the first, I've left the book over there. I've got the What We May Be book over there, which I did share about that in the last episode, and I'm not willing to get up and get over there right now. So, the first stream and teacher I am here to deeply acknowledge and express my deep gratitude to is Roberto Assagioli, who is the founder of Psychosynthesis, and Joan and Roger Evans. Oh, it's a big wind. Yes, yes. There is and Joan and Roger Evans, who created the London Institute of Psychosynthesis in, I think, 1973, with the blessings of Roberto Assagioli. And Roberto Assagioli initially studied with Freud and soon found there were many things he didn't resonate with in Freud's work. And he started to bring together many different elements from different traditions. And actually that was something that he really not only did in Psychosynthesis, but also welcomed the continuation of Psychosynthesis to continue receiving from the streams of other wisdom traditions, other sources of knowledge. And in one of the books that I'm writing over time about willingness, I've written in depth about him and his life. And again, you can just go and look it up. You could look up the London Institute of Psychosynthesis. I will also share some links here. And Roberto Assagioli's work. And I first discovered Psychosynthesis in a little bookshop in Canada, in Vancouver, in the University of British Columbia, and I was there when I was what was it again, 1988, when I was 20 years old, and I was in the bookshop of the university and looking in the psychology section and the spirituality section, and I found this book, What We May Be, which was actually by Ferrucci, also an Italian man who I believe studied with Assagioli, and it was and is all different practices, and so much about the imagination and understanding symbols and I bought that book, and it's very worn. It's stuck together with sticky tape. I read it many times. Not right at the beginning, actually. I think I might have only read it once. And Psychosynthesis it didn't stay to the forefront of my consciousness until a few years later, when I was doing my PhD at Cambridge University on the mother-infant relationship and diving deep into all kinds of things related to infant development, child development, pre- and perinatal psychology, all of those things that I loved and love. And it was still not enough for me. I was wanting more. I wanted more. And I had, when I finished my psychology degree, contemplated at the time training in clinical psychology. And at that time, as is often the case, but I don't know exactly in different countries what the thing is, but back then in England, in 1990, to be a clinical psychologist, there was no requirement or request or invitation to do any of our own inner work. And I knew that there was a lot of pain and a lot of painful feelings and a lot of my own history that was very important for me to deeply explore, listen to, have support with, in order to be supporting other people. So I had 10 years of weekly psychotherapy from the age of about 21 because I wanted to really understand myself. And I remember that, again, you might have probably heard this story, I've shared it a few times. I still also remember that moment where I was sitting in Cambridge and talking to a big wind, very big wind. Whoa, it's literally leaves flying in, yes. So I see everything is interrelated, and so I see the wind is here with us in this conversation. Hello, lovely wind. Ooh, I've got a little bit of dust in my eye, which I'm interested about. So something in my eye. Well, I connected with my eye, which was my friend was sitting in the Cambridge Centre. The curtains might have even been orange. I remember sitting on a seat, and she was talking about the therapy session she just had and how the relationship with her then boyfriend was being deeply affected by her relationship with her father. And I said, that is what I want to understand. I want to understand all of these things. And I think I might have been her therapist. That was my first ever therapist, who was a Gestalt therapist, who, so grateful to her. I worked with her for a few years whilst I lived in Cambridge. Anyway, so I'd had that sense of wanting to work with people in some healing format back then, but I'd said no to clinical psychology, so that's when life invited me into do this PhD. But at the time I was like, well, actually this is still not enough for me. I don't want to just be an academic. I don't just want to be in academia and research. I actually also want to dive deeper into more the therapeutic world. So again, I don't exactly know, but there were two choices. I don't exactly know how these came into my world. Again, there was psychosynthesis on the one hand, and the other one I considered was like family therapies, like family systems work, which is so interesting. That already I'm interested in that. And I remember getting prospectuses of them both, and again I've shared this many times because it was such a pivotal moment in my life. And the beautiful one, which is also over there, I've shared in the last podcast. I've been on a lot of calls lately. And it was so beautiful, it touched me deeply, the calligraphy, the quotes. I recognised something in them. And to me that's often these breadcrumbs, are these moments. I wonder if you resonate. These moments of recognition, of remembering, of something in me resonating with something in that out there. And to me, this is part of the soul's journey, is these recognition points, these points where we resonate. It's interesting, resonate, recognize, remember something that we know somewhere that's already has some, yes, this is it, this, yes, this is what I've been looking for. That was it. So I started training in Psychosynthesis in September, October 1992. We had a whole year just of our own inner journey. The wind is very strong. Yes. And I so trust that the wind is part of this conversation. The wind is part of this podcast. And see, to me, these are there's a beautiful feather just floating through. These are parts of the ways of getting free from the DDC, in that I think we're taught in the DDC, like for a podcast, that in some way we're told to keep the conversation being just here between me and you. But the conversation is between me and everything that I am a part of here, and you and everything that you are a part of there. To me, that is part of the love element of the Marion Method, which isn't just about love. It's about communion. It's about interconnectedness. It's about the love as a much more of an, even beyond archetypal. But yeah, that, and to me, that's what I'm interested in and love. Is that I am an interrelated part of all of this, the trees that are waving to me in the wind, and they are here part of this podcast with you. That little feather is part of the podcast. The snoring dogs are part of the podcast. The DDC, I believe, wants us to think we're this little separate thing, this little separate person that's not connected with anything. Well, my experience is it's exactly the opposite of that. So the first year was just about our own journey. I remember one of the Friday mornings, the first Friday morning, being about the journey of the soul, which is then, I remember the first time reflecting back on my life, and already as a 24-year-old, 24-year-old, starting to make sense of my journey already as a 24-year-old and what I'd lived, and that was meaningful. And even these concepts that my journey was meaningful, that my life did make sense, that there was a soul journeying through a life. All of these things were so nourishing for me. I loved them. And those kinds of things still deeply affect my work in terms of being fascinated in not only my own journey of my soul and my soul's calling, and how that fits in with not only my childhood, my infancy, my birth, my mother and father's experience, my ancestors, and that these things are all interrelated, and that's becoming more and more something that I'm fascinated with in working with others, in supporting them, in seeing this meaningful tapestry of their lives, of all of our lives. We're not just plonked here, that there is deep meaning and an interwoven meaning, purpose in all of it, which to me is, again, transformational. Buddha, one of the dogs, I didn't name him this name, he was named this already when he came to me. He's just come out from under the covers. The Buddha's come out from under the covers. So, I'm so grateful as well to Joan and Roger. I remember also a pivotal moment with Roger. The wind is really strong, so I'm sending love. You might be hearing a lot of wind noises and tree noises, and I invite you to, I'm sending love to however you feel when you hear those. I'm loving the power of the wind. I trust that the wind wants to be here as part of this conversation. I remember Roger one time, again, that's one of these moments. I wonder what the etymology of seared into. I think of it about it as being like fire, and So again, I'm not sure if I enjoy it, but it's that quality of like, these memories that I have a sense will be with me always, of me coming into the doorways of the Mill Hill in London, where was one of the places where we would go on Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the trainings. And I remember coming through the doorway once, and he would have been in his 50s, I think then, maybe mid-50s, a bit younger than I am now, well, maybe late 50s, I don't know. And I remember just him greeting me and saying something like, "Hello, Marion," and being so present and so warm and so welcoming. Well, my experience was welcome, invitation, presence, naming me and seeing me. And I remember that being just that in itself such a reparative experience in terms of my own journey with my own historical father. And Joan in particular, had bright, so they're still here again. You can even watch videos of them now in the modern era. Joan had bright mind, incredible mind, and the connections she made and the way she explored things. And again, I can remember these points throughout the training. So I trained for 1992 to 1998, so it was a 4-year training to become certified as a psychosynthesis psychotherapist and counsellor. And then I did a further 2 years of postgraduate or post whatever training. And there are so many moments that I can remember again as I close my eyes or just contemplate. And I remember one of the times, again, I remember exactly where we were sitting, in which room, and this was in Hendon rather than Mill Hill, and her saying one of the times, yes, but one of the most important things is, who is the I that is speaking? Who is the I, the letter I? So in psychosynthesis, being the I, the soul, and the self with a capital S, this triphasic model, this triphasic map that they had developed. And so, yeah, they taught through their presence, their ways of articulating things. It was so fascinating. And again, if you're interested, recently I had a look at the prospectus, and actually the now prospectus, and as you would have seen me last time if you've watched it, as I read through, and the title still, I'm intrigued and fascinated by them. We did so many things. We did dream work and creative visualization, and we studied so many of the traditions of psychotherapy. We looked at the different eras of psychotherapy, which again was so helpful for me to understand the different waves of psychology and psychotherapy, and just so many absolutely fascinating things, psychospiritual elements. My thesis was on psychospiritual narcissism and the Lady of Shalott, which actually I feel called to write more again, and that was in that era. And see the painting behind me, maybe if you're watching this rather than listening. I was really into the pre-Raphaelites and the whole medieval era at that time as well, so I was wearing green velvet and I just loved all of that stuff. And so basically one of the core parts of psychosynthesis, which has deeply influenced the structure of the Marion Method, is this idea that we are souls, that we have a personality, and that this is one of the things that's most influenced the Marion Method, that through our work, inner work, we can increasingly develop a personality that is a clearer and more accurate reflection of our soul, of who we most truly are. So that through growing up in the family that we did, and I would add now in the Marion Method much more of the emphasis on the culture as well, and the culture we did, and the time, the era we did, we absolutely needed to develop all different ways of, in the Marion Method, I call them be safe, belong and be loved. And then as adults, then we have the opportunity to increasingly become who we really are, to see all the ways we needed to adapt, and to increasingly have a soul, a personality that is a true reflection of who we are. And so in the Marion Method, I've really developed that in terms of including the culture piece, really understanding, particularly because of how I've been influenced by nonviolent communication, understanding language, understanding getting free from guilt and self-judgment and all of those kinds of things, so that increasingly we are free to be who we really are and to do what we're here to do, which is increasingly my lived experience, which is why I am comfortable to be here on a call with my background, with dust on my black Jaguar and cobwebs because I love spiders and I have a lot of cobwebs because I'm not willing to remove the spiders' homes, and just to be here so much freer than I was as a younger person when I was consumed with guilt and shame. So back to psychosynthesis, this idea of the soul and the personality. There are elements of the triphasic model that I haven't really included in the Marion Method, so there's much more articulation of soul and self in psychosynthesis, which I don't include in the Marion Method, I don't share about. But also this idea that we are love and will. And to me, I think this is one of the most major contributions of Assagioli. And again, in my book, The Wonder of Willingness, that I've written and then gone back and written again, and I have a sense there'll be a third wave of writing before it wants to come out into the world, is that I believe that many psychologies, psychotherapies, traditions, ways of understanding human beings is really focused on the love element, not really so much on the will element. And so much of that has been on, and of course these are so essential, thinking about Carl Rogers and the increasing understanding of the need for empathy, and all the attachment work of Bowlby, and remembering actually in the West or the South actually how the North used to be called the West and it's increasingly called the North now, isn't it? I get confused. See, at that point I would normally have years ago hit myself with a shame stick and felt shame, and then be like, oh, I need to delete that because what you don't. But look, the door banged because now I've closed the door to all of that. I've closed the door to being willing to hit myself with shame sticks. I feel confused. There are lots of things that I don't know. I am not willing to shame myself in relation to that. So yes, so a lot of focus on love, a lot of focus on compassion, attachment, babies and child's needs for attachment. So all these elements that I include in the love part of love and will. And I would really love to acknowledge the Taoists and their yin and yang symbol, which to me really represents love and will in a way that I don't. I just think is incredible, and I haven't seen any other paradigm articulate it in a way that I find so helpful. So the yin element, the love element, and so much less focus I think has gone into understanding the will as essential as love in the human soul. And I also think that's because of the disconnected domination culture, because there's been so much focus, hasn't there, in many therapies on understanding ourselves and really focusing on our childhood and our family and our feelings towards our parents, which is all very important, but only a small part of things. And actually what often means that many people then end up focusing on, it can also has in many cases also been a way of pathologizing individuals rather than seeing in my map that every response we have, every feeling we have, every way we've adapted to the family, culture and time we grew up in is deeply wise. It may have been painful, it may be something we're still doing now that is no longer required because we're not a child and we are safe now in ways and we have power now that we didn't then. But there's never anything wrong or awry. These are all wise adaptations. So in contrast to that, in the DDC, many maps have pathologized, individuals have kept the therapeutic relationship to really be focused on just childhood and really another way to adapt to the DDC. Whereas I'm most and actually focusing so much on inner work and actually not also including outer action and in terms of the will and creating change and actually seeing how powerful we are. Not only how loved we are, that we are loved, that we are loving, but also that we are profoundly powerful. We're not all powerful, but we are so what I often say in the Marion Method is we are more powerful than the DDC wants us to believe we are, but we are not all powerful. And there are many ways in which in the DDC we're given power and responsibility for what is not ours. So for me, I'm much more interested in supporting people to become more who we really are. So not only the door's going to keep on banging, and again in the past I'd be like, oh no, the door's banging, the door is banging, the doors are closing, the wind is here, this is apt for the time we're in, to shut the door and things, to say no to things. So much of what I learned earlier in my life was then I just thought I'll just keep being more loving, I'll just keep doing more inner work so that I can put up with these things. No. And again, this was where Philip Golabuk and the field project work came in, and he taught me so much about actually the importance of saying no and being unwilling to put up with things. But in my way of seeing things, the DDC has supported us to focus on believing there's something wrong with us and needing to fix ourselves, and therapy just becoming part of that, which is what the DDC does. So often it co-opts. So something might start off with this spark of moving towards more love and more will, and gets at some point co-opted and becomes then just part of the DDC. Does it? I've just seen it. Everything I've explored, I see it happening over and over again. Not everything I've explored. In many places I see this happening, and I wonder if you do too. So I think therapy in many ways became part of like how to help people fit into the DDC more. Whereas I'm more interested in, as I said, supporting people to become more who they really are, to understand that they are loved and love and loving and unconditionally love, and there's nothing wrong with them and all of the things, and they're interconnected with all that is, and that they are profoundly powerful, and that to actually create cultural change, because the disconnected domination culture is set up to disconnect us from our true nature as love and will. So again, this is where this is different. I'm talking, interesting, hey, I'm weaving in how psychosynthesis has affected my work, and also then where I've with the Marion Method brought it in and added all these other elements to it. But the essential element of we are a soul of love and will and consciousness, and then we have a personality, which is so the ego, rather than many of the paradigms that see ego as bad, or ego is get rid of the ego, or ego as meaning someone's thinks that they are amazing or whatever, all the ways that the ego is used. Again, I'm so grateful in psychosynthesis. I really learnt, to me, is the ego is it's the personality. It's just what we need to develop to be in the world, and we can transform that personality so that it becomes increasingly reflection of who we really are. The other thing I really loved learning from Psychosynthesis was, what did they call it? A external unifying centre. So if we to see the human being as, and my apologies, Joan and Roger and Roberto, this isn't quite, if I'm not remembering it accurately, but if there's the individual, the I, and their relationship with their soul. Parents initially are this external unifying centre. So it is the parents which influence the extent to which we're deeply connected with who we really are, this external unifying centre. Which is why our relationship with our parents has such a profound effect on who we believe ourselves to be, our personality. And then in our work as a therapist or a mentor, we can also become that. So we can increasingly, we can reflect back what we see of someone's soul, who they really are, and that gap between who they really are and who they've learnt themselves, who they've learnt to believe they are through the mirroring they received, through how the extent to which their parents were seeing through the lens of what I would say the DDC. So that's part of the importance of having others to reflect back to us who we really are, rather than who we have learnt inaccurately to believe who we are. So these are kinds of the maps that are and elements of psychosynthesis that have deeply affected me. And the other part is just really, I've talked about this elsewhere again, the will. The will, I remember when I heard about the will, I was intrigued, and I also had the sense of, I have no idea what is the will, which was so apt in terms of my own relationship with will and willingness at the time. And Roberto Assagioli has a book called, what is it called? The Will or Act of Will? My apologies, I've forgotten. I wish I'd beforehand brought all my psychosynthesis books to have them here to show you, and I don't. So I remember reading that book, and then of course in our studies at the institute we would read and we would write essays, and I was just, I don't understand it. So I really went on this journey to really understand it, and I've really devoted myself for decades to really understanding it. And again, through these other maps that I'm going to be talking about, helped me understand it in a way that is different to the way that Psychosynthesis and Roberto Assagioli understood it. But without all the things I learned, and even these maps, I don't imagine I would have even, I don't know, who knows what would have happened. But I also have another memory of one of our summer schools and going on a walk and just walking past this little beautiful old stone wall in England, and we just had a session, and I remember in the session somebody, I actually don't remember who it was, maybe Joan, saying, we need to want something before we're willing for it. And I really remember this really was repeating through my consciousness. I kept thinking about it. We want to want something before we're willing for it. And again, it being one of these kind of seed moments of, wow, we need to want something before we're willing for it. And if you're already familiar with the Marion Method work, you know that that has become a centre point of the willingness work, and was also built upon by my studies in MVC and the Field Project. So I'm so grateful to Psychosynthesis. I'm so grateful to Roberto. I'm so grateful to Joan and Roger. I'm so grateful to all the teachers that I had in the training. Thinking about Anne, about all these different moments. Again, I can scroll through and remember these pivotal moments, all the times I watched people express really big feelings there, So just so grateful to have had that in my 20s. Again, there's a massive wind. I mean, now, whoa! I haven't seen a wind this big for a long time. The trees are blowing, the leaves are coming, there's sticks falling on the roof. Power of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. And so again, I would love to say, in terms of the Marion Method, in the DDC we might be taught shouldn't have on a podcast lots of wind, and should I'm not even going to say I, because I'm unwilling to do that. Should delete it and take that bit out. No, that's the whole thing. No. We live in an interconnected web of conversations with life. So the idea of the journey of the soul is still deeply with me. The love and will, just so many maps and so many experiences, so influential. So much of the listening I received, the feelings I expressed, the friendships I made. Well, I also met my first husband at the very beginning of that training. We went through the whole 6 years together. We went through the whole journey of our relationship to getting married. Did we get married even whilst? Yes, to getting married. The whole journey. So we were studying together. We were talking about things together. We were exploring practices and processes together. I mean, that was pretty profound. So, soul, love, will, consciousness, personality. So next I would love to talk about Aletha Solter and Aware Parenting. I actually do have her books. So again, if you're watching, her books are just there underneath my books, which is so apt because they are the foundation of so much. And Aletha, I'm so grateful to you. I don't imagine you will watch this or listen, but I'm so grateful to you and your profound work. I'm experiencing in my life right now so much of a sense of fulfillment and gratitude and satisfaction for being who I am, being as myself as I am right now, and I imagine I'm going to become even more myself as I age and live more of my life, to doing what I'm here to do, to be living so profoundly my soul's callings, and in all the things I'm doing in the Marion Method and with Aware Parenting right now. I'm just like, oh my gosh! And again, my experience of I'm not taught this in the DDC, that with life experience, that life just to me becomes more and more wonderful. And actually, I'm also watching on YouTube at the moment. I found a man's work. I'm a little bit cold actually. A man's work, and he's, I think, 79 or something like that. And seeing him share about, for 35 years he studied this and trained in this and read this. I'm like, oh my gosh! The gifts of lived experience and studying certain things for decades and just deepening our understanding and keeping on following the threads and the breadcrumbs and learning new things and learning from new people. To me, it's the most wondrous thing. And again, it's not something I was taught in the DDC. In the DDC, the idea is age is a horrific thing, and everyone, especially if you're a woman, quick, go and get as much plastic surgery and whatever else, and make sure you dye your hair and see if you can keep looking like a 25-year-old for as long as possible, and all of these things to me. Whereas the gifts of non-DDC cultures, of course, the wisdom of life is honoured. The elders who have lived and have received the gifts of lived experience and being immersed in things for decades and studying things and life experience. I mean, I find it so delicious, and I'd like to share it with you. Like, if you're younger and you haven't experienced that, people sharing, oh my gosh, I love it. I'm in awe and wonder and delight a lot of the time of like, I would never have believed this would be possible from the personality I lived in as a 24-year-old who was filled with guilt and shame and terror, to my experience now. I mean, wow. So to move back to talking about Aletha Solter, her magical books. I first discovered aware parenting on the actual internet when I was pregnant with my daughter, who's 24, and I had all this background. So at that point, a 14-year background in psychology and psychotherapy, all the things that I was still really passionate about: attachment theory, anthropology, pre and perinatal psychology, and the effects of our time in utero and birth and the early years on who we become. All the different therapies I'd studied, and rebirthing, and all of these practices and processes and workshops and trainings and books I'd read. And I wanted to find a form of parenting that would include all of these. And so I was looking on the internet. Oh my gosh, I always say I was looking on the internet, but I also found Tears and Tantrums in a local bookshop. So am I even remembering it accurately now? You knows, I knows. I think it... How interesting. It is also one of the things of becoming older I find is like, am I remembering that? Or have I just told that story 10 times and now I'm remembering the story that I've told? Anyway, I found it on the internet, and I looked through and attachment theory, tick, the effects of birth and how profoundly influenced we are by our early experiences, tick. Did I show that? Anthropology, tick. I mean, just went through all of the things, that everything, that yes, and all the things she's saying, yes, this resonates, yes. And then it had this extra piece, which again, I'm sure you've heard me share this story, if you've listened to me at all about talking about this, which was that babies and children have the ability to heal from stress and trauma from infancy onwards, from birth onwards. And I was astounded, because having worked for many years as a psychotherapist by this point in time, and also seeing this other piece, which was almost everyone who was coming to me sharing about their painful feelings and all the ways in which they had not had their feelings heard in childhood, and all the ways in which they didn't experience being loved, and all the ways in which they were judging themselves and believing there was something wrong with them, and not really knowing who they really were and what they really wanted to do and what was important to them, what they loved. And here in Aware Parenting, it really spoke to this feelings, the importance of listening to feelings, and that had been what I'd come to in my work. So, oh my gosh, like all these adults still wanting their feelings heard because they didn't receive them being heard as babies and children and teens. So I saw it. I had a massive yes, Aware Parenting. It's like the light bulb moment above the head. Hallelujah. Well, actually, I don't want to say hallelujah. Yay! Woohoo! And so what she helped me see, and actually it took me really quite some while to really understand, and of course this was a completely new paradigm, so because although I'd understood all these different elements that also go into aware parenting. I wasn't familiar with how babies heal from stress and trauma. I wasn't familiar with differentiating out hunger from when they're wanting to tell us about their birth. I wasn't familiar with really understanding in the moment how dissociation happens and when a baby's dissociated rather than deeply relaxed and present. Even though that was in my PhD, I spent hundreds of hours, millisecond by millisecond, observing babies because I hadn't had that map. I hadn't been able to see it. But I'd wondered at times. So it was really through my experience with my darling daughter, who's 24, and through, again, that lived experience of experimenting and going back to Aletha's book, The Aware Baby, over and over again, and reading and having finally having some consultations with Aletha. If I'd go back in a time machine, I would go back and right from when I first read the books, I would prioritise every bit of money I had to having consultations with her, because this is what I see so often. And I think it's also part of DDC conditioning, is even as young people thinking, oh yes, I know this and I understand it, despite not having anyone around me who knew about it, no elders around me, never seen anyone do it, but just like, yes, oh yes, I can do this. And I see it so often now, is so often mothers, and I think, oh sweetheart, do you know how important this is? If it of course, only if it resonates, if aware parenting resonates with you and you have a baby or you're pregnant, the major difference it makes when we have someone with us who has already travelled this journey, not only understands it theoretically, but has travelled the journey and has experimented and explored and has that experience. This is the importance of elders, of community, of support, of actually doing this together. And because in the DDC we're trained and taught to just do things on our own, and we should be able to do it on our own without support and without other people. That's all part of the disconnection part, the opposite of love. If I could go back in a time machine, that's what I would do. I would have as many sessions with Aletha as often as I could to receive her wisdom and experience. And instead I learnt through my own experience, which is also a profound way of learning, and I'm very grateful for, oh look, there's a leaf even. I put my hand down and felt cold sensation. Look, a leaf. Leaf, what might the message from life be there? That's the Marion Method. A leaf, to leave something. I don't know. I'm really willing to understand the meaning. I don't know what that is. So I didn't receive that support for quite some while, and by that time there are many things that I hadn't understood, in many ways I hadn't understood Lana accurately, in many ways I'd responded that had set up certain themes that still affect our relationship now. And I'm in the Marion Method terminology, I'm not willing to hit myself with sticks for that. I look back and I go, well, of course that me didn't think this is very important to actually receive support from the person who knows the most about it. Of course I didn't think that, because I was still mired in DDC conditioning at that time. So anyway, I learned so much from my own experience. I'm so grateful for that. And really what aware parenting did is, and I hear this so often from parents who practice it, is it wasn't just about parenting. It transformed my whole understanding of who we are as human beings, why we are the way we are, particularly about feelings. It sparked this fascination with feelings and really understanding, particularly the whole understanding the difference between relaxation and dissociation, which is what I would say is the primary thing that is not understood in so many paradigms. And just that lived experience of hundreds of hours of listening to their feelings. And my son, who was born 4.5 years later, by which time I was an aware parenting instructor, and so very comfortable with feelings, and much more through lived experience, I understood much more how natural it is for all babies to have a lot of big feelings. I understood much more about differentiating hunger from when a baby's wanting to share about their day or their birth or other painful things that have happened. Felt very comfortable with feelings by then. Transformed my own experience of being able to be with my own feelings, even though I'd had 10 years of psychotherapy and 6 years of training as a psychotherapist and working as a psychotherapist and all of those things, which all helped. They were so helpful. And I've heard many people share this, that come to parenting and perhaps have done a lot of inner work already, and there's the invitation to go way deeper. It helped me in all my work in terms of being able to be with the feelings of my mentees, of deeply trusting. I'm so grateful to Aletha. There's so many things I'm grateful to Aletha about, bazillion things, many things. One of them is the deep trust that she holds in the innate wisdom of babies and children. And I'm in awe of that deep trust. And again, it was really only through many years of experience and being with my children all through their early years and through their teenage years to really, really get that deep trust. That they really know. They really know what they need. They really know how to heal from daily stress and larger trauma. They really they know how to learn and what they're interested in learning. Did I talk about food? I think I did. They know what their bodies need in terms of food and how much and when and all those things. And so much of that has been so life-changingly transformative, because to me, what aware parenting gave me is this deep sense of the incredible biological and emotional wisdom of the human being, right from day dot. And that is a gift that, oh my gosh, to really, again, to come away from what the DDC teaches us, which is innately, I would say, the opposite of that, which is there's something innately wrong with us. We're not trustable. We need to be taught through punishments and rewards in order to be loving members of society, though we don't really know what we need as children. Just all the ways in which children and babies are seen as lacking in wisdom, intelligence, competence, and all of the maps and models of children over the many, many years, and how it's often just another flavour of something wrong, lacking immaturity, rather than, I just see they're so innately wise. And so much of my journey has been about remembering my innate wisdom through seeing that innate wisdom in my babies and children. I'm just going to say something to my daughter. Lana, are you up to going to the class today? I'm doing a podcast, but you want to go? Okay, that's a no. I've learned so much from them, and to really come from this sense, this conditioning, which I believe is so layered in, because I think it's been around for so many generations for most of us who live in particularly my kind of Eastern or colonised, industrialised places. All these beliefs about the innate wrongness, badness, etc. of humans to, oh my gosh, what you mean when we meet a baby's needs and we listen to their feelings and we respond to them without punishments and rewards, which is the three aspects for aware parenting. They're deeply present and innately want to contribute and cooperate and connect. They just are non-violent and gentle and deeply present. I mean, what I learned about human beings through practicing aware parenting is, again, it's through lived experience, isn't it? We learn so much. So it's that combination of having Aletha's books, having her ways, her lenses, and then my lived experience. And all of those experiences then go into when I'm with mentees, or when it's so deeply affected the Marion Method in terms of wonderment of who we are as human beings and deep trust. That's why I deeply trust my mentees and their timing, because I've learned to do that. My children taught me how to do that. I can unconditionally love people because my children learnt me. They taught me how to do that. I had increasingly deep understanding of feelings, and when a feeling is caused by a need or when it's caused by the past. My children showed me that. It deeply affected my map of the three types of feelings, which has an added piece. I mean, the amount that I learned about loving limits. It took me years to really embody them. Loving limits, oh my gosh. And again, how much they influence the Marion Method in terms of how I perceive that in relation to the embodiment of love and will in relationship, and particularly in relationship with our children, which in some of the ways can be some of the most difficult things, again, particularly in the culture that we live in the DDC. The innate wisdom, just all the things. So the three aspects of aware parenting, if you're not familiar with them, are attachment style parenting, so that's lots and lots of closeness, prompt responsiveness, attunement to needs, meeting needs, all of those beautiful, lovely things. The second aspect is non-punitive discipline. So that means when children are doing things that we do not enjoy, looking for the reason behind that behaviour, understanding that there's always a wise reason why children do what they do. And including in that would mean sometimes we're not enjoying it, and it's actually about finding ways to meet both of our needs. They're doing it to meet a need, and actually the way they're doing it is not meeting a need of ours. So what else can we offer that will meet their needs but will also meet our needs, including for safety or ease or whatever it is. So that's the second aspect. And then the third aspect is understanding how much babies and children are influenced by what they experience and experience stress and trauma, and how they innately know how to heal from stress and trauma and are repeatedly inviting that. And that is through being safe in the moment, which is through connection and closeness, and either crying or raging or laughter and play, particular times of play called attachment play, or through talking as they get older, but which never replaces crying, raging, laughter and play. And so if you're interested in, so I do want to say, if you're interested in aware parenting, I do have the Living Aware Parenting podcast where I talk about all of these things, so that if you want to learn more, that is here on YouTube and also in all the usual audio podcast places. And again, I'll share links for learning about aware parenting. So Aletha's website is awareparenting.com. The other little doggy, koyo, which is a Japanese word for walking through autumn leaves, which is like a coat. Oh, and she is sniffing the leaf, walking through. There's a little example of, like, I happen to mention, I don't think I've hardly ever mentioned the meaning of her name. She came out from under the covers and she sniffed the leaf. Walking through the leaves, sniffing the leaves. So grateful to Aletha. I continue to learn from her. She made thousands and thousands and thousands of edits of all my books that have aware parenting in them, including the children's books, and I learned so much more. So here's me thinking, I've already been immersed in aware parenting for 20 years. I've been teaching it. I've made many courses. I've worked with thousands of parents, and I'll write these books. And I learned so much. My understanding of aware parenting deepened, became even more nuanced. And that's what I love about all of these paradigms that I love. So, and with aware parenting is that there's just always more. There's more to learn. There's more nuance. There's more embodiment. There's more, and of course, with different ages of children, there's always more. And I just love that. To me, that's something so profound about any map and set of practices where it's an ongoing journey of increasing refinement, nuance, depth, understanding. So delicious. So, yeah, my lovelies are now, my daughter's 24, my son's 20. So grateful for aware parenting, including all the ways in which my own hurts. There's the wind. There you go. Did you notice that happened last time I expressed my gratitude? Thank you. Thank you so much, Aletha. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's not only brought profound meaning to my life, I understand human beings in a way that's transformed all my relationships, not only with my children. I've had the profound satisfaction, joy and fulfillment of sharing about it, thinking about it, writing things about it, and contributing to many other families. And the thousands of testimonials I've received from people over 21 years as an aware parenting instructor of what a difference it makes to us as parents and our relationship with our children, but most of all to our child's experience and feelings and how they feel, what they experience, what they internalize, the responses they internalize, which they then go on to say to others. The number of times I've had people saying, my child's now saying to other children or their sibling or me, I'm here with you, or I'm listening, or I welcome your crying, whatever it is. So profound, so profound. Thank you, Aletha. And then really it was through my experience of working, my own journey with aware parenting, practicing it as a mother, and working with many other, primarily mothers, where I'd see them really immerse themselves and doing everything they could to meet their children's needs, to respond without punishments and rewards, and understand what was going on for their child and really respond at that true causal level, and to play attachment play and to listen to crying and raging and have all the conversations, and at the same time over here doing the opposite of this for themselves, not valuing their needs, judging themselves for their needs, being alone and isolated in their experience, in terms of the second aspect, or the opposite, judging themselves, punishing themselves, not looking at the source of their own behaviours when they reacted in ways they didn't want to, and just judging themselves for that. And the third aspect, just also judging themselves for having big feelings, not being compassionate with themselves when they had big feelings. And I realised, and this is where the psychosynthesis came back in again, is like, I think, and that choice I'd made, which I didn't mention here, which was actually I'm going to move away from being a psychotherapist with the adults to actually support parents, because I actually think it's so much more effective to support parents so that their children grow up with far less of these things that they were bringing to me as adults in the psychotherapy room. But this is when it became clear to me, I am being invited actually, I think, what I would like to do is work again with the parents, with their own journey as parents. So not only so that their experience was more enjoyable and that they would transform through the experience, but also, of course, so that they could practice aware parenting in more how they wanted to be able to. And so really this is where the seeds of the Marion Method started. Actually, I really want to support mothers, and it was particularly mothers at the time, to respond in these same ways. So this is where the map really started to take shape in terms of, again, these parallels, honouring their needs, including for support and community and connection and empathy, understanding what was the cause of when they were responding in ways they didn't want to their child, or they weren't able to offer a loving limit or do attachment play. Why? Rather than judgment, why? Increasing compassion. And also feeling more and more comfortable with their own feelings, including receiving support and listening and empathy for their own feelings. So really, this is where really one of the reasons aware parenting influenced the Marion Method so much. And actually someone was sharing this in one of the my calls over the weekend. I'm doing my Marion Method Matermind or Mattermind, depending on whether you're from England pronunciation or more the Latin pronunciation, or and my Marion Method Compasses, where I'm sharing about the practices, where someone was sharing about, a lovely woman was sharing about how her practice of aware parenting has been so pivotal in her practice of the Marion Method for herself. And I said, yes, exactly, it makes it so much easier, because so much of the reparenting aspect of the Marion Method is, in certain ways, doing for ourselves what we're doing with our children. The reparenting, literally. When we know, when I meet my child's needs, they feel relieved and relaxed. Okay, and this is how I might meet my child's needs, and this is how I listen to their feelings and the kinds of things I say and how they feel afterwards. When we've had that lived experience as a parent with aware parenting, so many of these things are transferable to our own inner, what I call reparenting, not an aware parenting term, a Marion Method term. It's a literal reparenting. That's what I was showing in one of the calls on the weekend. It's as if we are 2 years old in that moment, and we are experiencing the as if we were two, feeling the feelings and the needs and the thoughts of the 2-year-old us, and responding to that. So that's what so much of the Marion Method is really through seeing, when we do this, through the experimentation. That's why I love the experimentation, the observation, because it's through that experimentation and observation our children show us. That's what aware parenting, the gift of aware parenting. That saying, the proof is in the pudding. It's through observation. When I do this, I see this in their eye, in their presence, in their eye contact, in their muscles, in their sleep, in their behaviour. And so there are many people I've worked with over the years who've practiced the Marion Method who aren't parents, and practicing aware parenting as a parent helps the process of practicing the Marion Method for ourselves so much easier. Because so much of it is just kind of flipping it around. So I noticed that I started doing that for myself. I'd be saying the words to my children. I'm here with you. I love you. I love you unconditionally. I'm right here and I'm listening. And I started to also go, oh, how would I feel if I said that to myself? And then the idea of the inner loving mother came. I was like, oh, how about if that's the reparenting. So all of these things that I'd experienced in aware parenting, it so influenced the Marion Method. So again, it's very important for me to really differentiate what is aware parenting, what's the Marion Method. So aware parenting is all about children. And yes, Aletha very much acknowledges how important it is for us to have our needs met as parents, to have community and support, that we're meant to parent in community, and to reflect on our own childhood and how it's affecting our responses to our children. But she doesn't have any suggestions of how to do that beyond receiving, listening and contemplating and, honouring our own feelings. So she doesn't have particular practices beyond those most beautiful ones of, human connection and inquiry and listening, receiving, listening from others. And where parenting, the Marion Method are very much separated out. So I want to acknowledge, although the Marion Method is deeply influenced by where parenting is completely separate. Where parenting is about how we respond to children. The Marion Method is primarily about us as adults and the reparenting and the reculturing. So, thank you, Aletha. Again, my invitation for wherever, even if you have adult children, or you're not a parent, I just think everyone, if you resonate with these ways of thinking, that anyone and everyone learns more about human beings by understanding children in the way that Aletha offers, because it does affect how we perceive the behaviour of other adults as well as children. So, thank you, Aletha. I can have a sip of my hot chocolate, and it's got hot chocolate all over the mug. This is my second hot chocolate of the morning. So, Marshall Rosenberg. And also I don't have my MVC books here, and actually I gave a lot of them away some years ago, which I regret now because I got into digital books and now I'm wanting to get back into paper books. So anyway, go and buy them all over again. Marshall Rosenberg and Nonviolent Communication. Another essential stream of teachings and consciousness that's profoundly affected my life, my experience, my parenting and my callings, and the Marion Method. So when Lana was 9 months old, I was loving aware parenting, yes, and I also had a sense of, I think there's something else I want to learn to add to this. I want something else. And how did I find out about that? I think also, gosh, now I'm forgetting. I think it was also on the internet. MVC, Nonviolent Communication. I'd had a reading some years before that so much of my 30s would be about language and the written and the spoken word. And I remember when I had that reading, I was like, oh, really? Okay. It became very much true. And I think one of the things that was really most fascinating, well, I remember when I first read one of his books. He has many books. Again, I so recommend, if you're interested in language and the whole idea of the disconnected domination culture and the effects of language on culture and getting free from guilt. I invite you to look into Marshall Rosenberg's work if you haven't already. The website, the Centre for CNVC, cnvc.org, Centre for Nonviolent Communication. I read his MVC, A Language of Life book, and I remember it as if, so even though I already had all these new ways of thinking with aware parenting, of like, oh my gosh, okay, which really did also build on what I'd already learned in psychosynthesis. But then I remember reading the book the first time, and I felt and I learnt a feeling word. I learnt many feeling words. Discombobulated. I felt completely and utterly discombobulated. Has anyone else ever felt that? Learning MVC at the beginning. So many of the ways that I had thought about human beings were turned on their head, and particularly, just so many things. I just remember it's almost as if I could feel my consciousness being, I don't know if you think about synapses or whatever, just things like pulled apart and put together in different places, and whole different elements lighting up and firing up. I mean, it was just, wow, phenomenal. And Koyo, hey, come on, darling. And I had a similar sense of, yes, oh my gosh, I am fascinated, I am immersed. And again, I also just the next several years, as well as being completely immersed in aware parenting and reading Aletha's books, rereading, thinking, writing articles, starting to just be really, when did I start creating courses? Not for some while, I did that, but just so immersed in it, and the practice all the time in my practice with Lana, practicing. Alongside that was MVC, so I remember like every night after Lana went to sleep, I'd be on, back in the day it was Yahoo groups, an MVC Yahoo group, and practicing my MVC responses, so responding to needs and feelings and giving empathy and reading books. And I went to workshops and I went to practice groups, and I read as many of Marshall's books as I could find, and to really realise what he was sharing about guilt. Guilt not just being an inherent thing of human beings. What? Guilt being created by language, particularly the word should, have to, must. Understanding willingness, so the word, would you be, or the phrase, would you be willing? I tend to say, are you willing now in the MM work, but in MVC, would you be willing became the most commonly spoken phrase in our family. Would you be willing? The map of observations, feelings, needs, and requests. That I would be thinking through that almost every conversation I had. What am I observing? What am I feeling? What am I needing? What's my request? And what was the beautiful thing for me is because Lana was learning to think and speak. From 9 months old is when I learned about MVC. I first started learning. That I was learning to think in different ways and speak in different ways, whilst she was learning to think and speak. So it was so delicious, because the way I was talking to her was this constant, I was with her pretty much all the time, and so these invitations to actually be contemplating, already what I had in aware parenting is, what is she needing, what might she be feeling, all of these things to really be observing her, but also at the same time, what might I be needing, what might I be feeling, what am I observing, like this clarification. And for me, one of the biggest aha moments, which I was incredulous. I felt incredulous which is really understanding the difference between a thought and a feeling. And all the ways in which, in this culture, we use words, and because they just follow I feel, we think they're a feeling, whereas actually they're a thought. I felt incredulous. How could I have read hundreds of books about feelings, therapy, childhood, and no one else has ever, as far as I know, although Michael did already know about this, the father of my children, no one else had ever really helped me understand this before. Oh my gosh, what? So all the words so in MVC they're called faux feelings. So I'm not going to say I feel because I'm unwilling to speak these anymore, but words like, so someone might say they feel abandoned, abused, attacked, bullied, all of these things. These are all thoughts. And why is that important? Because, well, if we don't know the difference between what we're thinking and what we're telling ourselves and what we're actually feeling in our body, the amount of confusion that creates, and this is one of the reasons why I went on to create the map of the 3 types of feelings, it was through all that I learned about, no, this is what I'm telling, this is a thought, and this is a feeling in my body. And why is that important? Well, this is why I developed the map of the 3 types of feelings, which was really receiving what I learnt from Aletha and Aware Parenting, and also what I learnt from MVC and Marshall Rosenberg, and seeing in the map of the 3 types of feelings in the Marion Method, we have needs feelings that are caused in the present moment by needs, including for safety, including very biological needs. And there are what I call healing feelings, which are caused by the past, which MVC doesn't so much, or didn't then anyway really include as much. Feelings that are literally because we are revisiting the past in that moment. So in the Marion Method, we are 5-year-old us, and we're feeling the feelings that we felt in that particular situation when we were 5. And thoughts feelings, which I learned so much about, again, that isn't the word, they use faux feelings in MVC, feelings that are caused by what we are telling ourselves, what we're thinking, which includes what we've been conditioned to think, and also what we might choose to think. And why is that important to differentiate that? Because, and I think this is why there are so many different maps of feelings, because some maps of feelings say all feelings are really about biological here and now state, and they're automatic and they happen straight away, and this is the way to respond to feelings. And what I would say is this is the most apt way to respond to what I call needs feelings. Absolutely. And so when I know, this is a needs feeling, or this part of this feeling is a needs feeling, okay, what am I needing? And in the Marion Method, then what am I willing for that need to be met? That's responding aptly. And then healing feelings. Many maps really are focusing on our past and responding to the feelings and the healing from the past. But that's not all feelings. Some feelings are absolutely about the here and now, about our here and now unmet needs for community, for support, for acknowledgement, all kinds of things. But particularly in terms of what I call thoughts feelings, so many of the thoughts feelings are created by cultural ways of thinking, including guilt. We are taught to say we should and we have to and we can't and we must. Not can't, I didn't include that in there. We must in terms of guilt. Knows that. And so these become feelings that we might just then have. I felt guilt and shame almost all the time. I didn't know that I I was kept on recreating it by what I was telling myself. And why is that important? Well, because when I know which feeling is coming from where, and usually a feeling might have a percentage of each of those, I can respond in the most apt way. I can say, oh, what am I needing, and am I willing for that need to be met? And so the feelings will dissipate. When the need is met, the feelings will dissipate. With healing feelings, the feelings are there because we want, those younger parts of us want to be heard. We want to have reparative experiences. When we do that, the feelings dissipate. In terms of thoughts, feelings, some of the thoughts might be thoughts that we do choose ourselves as souls of love and will. Other thoughts, like many of the DDC thoughts, that there's something innately wrong with us and that we should do this, and the coercion and all the things. The most apt response is to say, do I want to be telling myself that about this situation or myself? And if it's a no, what do I want to be telling myself? What do I want to think about this? What do I choose? Which is where the power piece comes in terms of will and the Marion Method. So to me, this was so pivotal. I mean, I'm so grateful to Marshall Rosenberg. Oh my gosh. To really understand, again, in a lived experience where for many, many, many years, MVC was like, and for me as well, because I wanted Lana and also then Sonny, when he came along, to not internalize shoulds and so many of what I call the DDC's ways of thinking. I spoke what's called classical MVC for many years. So most people will speak more like what's called colloquial. So classical MVC is actually the maps and the specifics, the observations, feelings, needs, requests. I deleted should from my vocabulary because I didn't want my children to learn the word should. I didn't want them to do that to themselves or others. So I was very, very, very focused on language and every word really that left my mouth. And I'm so grateful because you will see, as I speak, you'll see often that I'm still often, there you go, I'm doing it now. Is this a word that I choose to speak? That's why I love looking at etymology, and actually over time some of the words I've been chosen to speak, I go, I actually don't resonate with that anymore. And what is the etymology of that, and how has that word been used over time? And actually I have a no for that. I'm not willing for that because the words we speak are so profoundly powerful, and this is one of the things I learned from Marshall, but I've also developed it in particular ways in the Marion Method. They deeply affect how we feel, what we believe to be true, how we respond to other people, what we believe to be true about reality. And for me, I love to support people to speak words that help them connect more with their true nature as love and will. So that's where these, you can probably start seeing where these maps are all joining together. Where I saw, this will fit with here. Okay. Psychosynthesis, love and will. I statements. Okay. How I feel when I say a word. What am I telling myself? Okay. What is our true nature as love and will? What is power? What is love? So it's these kind of weaving together of these different webs from these different incredibly beautiful maps so far that I've shared. Psychosynthesis, Reparenting, MVC, and what I will talk about as well, the field project of this fits together here. And I started writing in all these little black notebooks. I had hundreds of pages, tens of these little notebooks where I was making sense of these things. And oh my gosh, and so are you willing? Willingness, so much of what I learnt from Marshall as well is only? I remember one of the things he said was, in his family, he said, I only want people to do things with the joy of a child feeding ducks. What? Not coercing people, not telling people they should, not guilting people into taking action, including our children, and not using coercion, not using power over, not also coercing ourselves and feeling resentful, all of these things that I was learning. Oh my gosh, that whole willingness piece. And what does willingness mean? What is willingness? And how do I feel when I say, are you willing? And am I really listening to myself when someone says, are you willing? The lived experience of that for those years and years and years where really aware parenting and MVC were so front of focus. Psychosynthesis was really in the background for many years while I was really in this day-to-day lived experience with my children of practicing aware parenting and learning to think and speak in these very different ways. Wow, what an incredible gift. So willingness, that question, are you willing? And really understanding power. So really understanding power and what he called the domination culture, which he learnt from Walter Wink, who talked about domination systems, or they both did. And Walter Wink learnt from Riane Eisler, who coined the term in the first place. And I'm amazed that I've never really been called to look at her work, and I just briefly looked at it recently, and I'm in awe, and I'm trusting the timing. I have a sense that I'll be deeply called to dive in deep to her work. I mean, she's the one who actually coined the term. And isn't that so interesting in terms of the DDC, as I found these two men's work, and for years would quote Marshall that he got this term from Walter Wink, and I only later found out that Walter Wink actually got it from Riane Eisler. I mean, that's so interesting as well, isn't it? But to really understand these cultural beliefs, these cultural ways of thinking, this cultural relationship with power over, and through language, the coercion, why he calls it non-violent communication, that much of the communication in this culture is actually violent. And wow, oh my gosh, you mean when I'm coercing myself and saying I should, that is actually violent, which is why I deleted should. No, I'm not willing. I am not willing to say the word should. And many words that I deleted from my vocabulary, and then many ways in which I saw that some of them were, as many years of kind of unearthing, in a way, the more subtle forms of these things. Wowzers. So I learned so much about culture, language, guilt, my passion for getting free from guilt, shame. Oh my gosh, difference between what they call faux feelings and feelings that come from needs. The list, there we go, what else? So Marshall has, and many other people have also kind of developed these lists or changed them in ways or added their own things. Lists of needs and lists of feelings. So the list of universal human needs. Oh my gosh. And then the list of feelings. Feelings when needs are met and feelings when needs are unmet. And so I photocopied those lists, and it's the olden days, this was the early 2000s. I put it's like sticky back plastic, I don't know what it's called nowadays, and I had them on my countertop in my kitchen, and many times a day as I was learning, what am I needing now to really, what am I needing? I'm needing and what also really helped me with also Lana and then Sunny too, what are they needing to actually put words to it, to understand needs in ways, again, in our culture we're so often taught not to. And to have this vocabulary as well, and to be able to also offer empathy to other adults. Are you feeling da-da-da? Are you needing X, Y, and Z? Oh my gosh, it's so profoundly helpful. And again, that was through really lived experience of many years, as you probably gathered. So, going past, what's that? And that's where, I learnt these feeling words like discombobulated, and my feelings vocabulary extended a lot from just the small number of words that I had, even though I, as I said, I was already a psychotherapist. I was already practicing aware parenting. I was already passionate about feelings, understanding feelings and feeling feelings and supporting my children to express their feelings freely, and MVC helped me have a much wider vocabulary of feelings. Koyo is licking some sore bits on Buddha's back. Isn't that so interesting? Yeah, about how to... I really learnt about empathy, offering empathy from MVC. Offering compassion. So yeah, I was learning it. I immersed myself in it first, and that's what I often say to people when if you're learning aware parenting, if you really once you get to the point of I really resonate with this, my invitation is for a while is to not also be looking at other things if you want to. What I found is for many people a lot of confusion when there's an immersion in something and other maps that are different. And so for me, I found it easy to immerse myself in both aware parenting and MVC because they were absolutely different, but really complementary, very, very clearly different. So I knew exactly what aware parenting was and exactly what MVC was. But MVC helped me in my practice of aware parenting, and aware parenting, I keep hitting my nose, don't hurt what you know. Aware parenting helped me in my practice of MVC. So the weaving started to happen after these immersions. Oh, okay, la 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 la. Then came the field project and Philip Golabuk, which is the fourth main thread of influence in the Marion Method. So again, thank you so much, Philip. And so I first learned about the field project, I think it was the end of 2005. I was looking up deja vu, and again I'm repeating many of the things I said in this first episode of this. I always invite you, if you ever want to fast forward or go fast, I welcome your yeses and nos, including your no to me. I looked up deja vu in the search engine, so I was wanting to help my dad with all his experiences of deja vu and all the conflict he felt, and the field project came up. So it was initially a desire to help my dad, and became again something that I just immersed myself in deeply. And what I loved about it is it really, there's so much that specifically in terms of, again, these words, willingness. So I had will and willingness in psychosynthesis, had this sense of, in aware parenting, not coercing children, eliciting cooperation, as it's called, in aware parenting. Then there was so much about willingness in MVC. Would you be willing? Connecting in with willingness and choice. Difference between choice and coercion, including of ourselves. And then, again, in the field project, willingness, so much about willingness. And so much about yeses and nos. And willingness, again, Philip was very passionate about language, but particularly so much of the willingness work emerged out of here, and I really want to acknowledge specifically, if you practice my willingness practice, it was profoundly influenced by what Philip calls the decisive question. So the beginning part of that is profoundly influenced by that. And again, these threads that went through, my moment beside the stone wall in the Psychosynthesis summer school, contemplating, we need to want something before we can be willing for it. And then my experience with aware parenting, of seeing my children's what they wanted, their needs as well, and then this, would you be willing in MVC, and then this really deep dive into willingness, and really understanding, particularly in terms of our relationship with willingness and our own internal state, and what happens in the world, how our willingness influences what we experience. So I'd say probably my experience of MVC was much more about relationships with other human beings, and culturally that whole piece. And the field project was so much more about, it kind of took the context wider again in terms of the true nature of reality. And so in a way MVC was like studying the culture as well, culture and language. And this again, the field project went wider than that in terms of consciousness, and although actually MVC is all about consciousness, but in terms of what we experience, the events in our lives, and not just in our relationships, but actually in the things that we experience in our lives. And Philip had studied a lot of the New Thought work, and he was really differentiating his work from like The Secret and all of those things that had become very popular, and that all, the I manifested it whole idea, to really understand that our willingness and not willingness profoundly affects what we experience, but that we're not all powerful. Again, this has deeply influenced the Marion Method work. That our yeses and nos do have non-local effects, so non-local being a field project term. Isn't that interesting? I'm popping back in that. He really spoke a lot of terms that were related to quantum physics, so the field project, including the word field, so non-local, these kinds of things. And so how much our willingness and not willingness affects our experience, but not in the way that became very kind of more mainstream, like in The Secret type of, in the I manifested idea. And so he also really had in conversation with the field. So his work also really influenced my conversations with life work, and really this sense that we are in conversation with something that is that what he called the field, what I call life, has so much more resources, information than we do, that we're not all powerful, that our yeses and nos make a difference, but we're not all powerful. We're not manifesting, we're not creating it. We are in conversation with the field, or with what I call life. And so this has really affected the Marion Method in terms of power and understanding power. And so you might often hear me say, I think I've already said it today, we are so much more powerful than the DDC wants us to believe, because most of us as children experienced that we didn't have choice, our noes weren't welcomed, we were coerced, we taught to coerce ourselves, we learned, we heard should and have to and got to, all of those things. And as a result, there's a big burp. And again, in the past I would have hit myself with a guilt stick. No, a shame stick. I was combining two sticks there. A shame stick, and I would delete that. I'm keeping it in there. My body is innately wise. All of our bodies are innately wise. Our bodies are communicating. The burp came at that exact moment. Burp's often that that release, the relief. I'm noticing I'm finding it harder to think clearly as I speak about the field project work. So in the Marion Method I say, you see how my consciousness goes? I go down a little avenue and they go, come back to here. What was I talking about? Oh, down a little meandering path. Let's come back here again to the signpost. Oh, another little path. Let's come back to the signpost. So as a result, most of us experience that we are not powerful. So in the MM work, and what I've learned really from Philip and also from NVC, is we are actually way more powerful than the DDC wants us to believe we are, but we are not also all powerful. And we're not responsible for everything. We're given responsibility also as children often for things that aren't ours. We're often told the make me feel thing, which again, so grateful I learned in MVC, the language of making someone feel somebody, or the language of feeling annoyed by someone, all of these things, that the language tricks us into believing that we're responsible for the feelings of others, that we cause the feelings of others, that we learn as children, that then we continue to take responsibility for the feelings, needs and behaviours of others and what happens in the world in ways that are not ours. And so much of the manifestation work, in my experience, can also tap into that, where people then may be taking responsibility for what isn't theirs. Yes, we do have power. Our yeses and nos do have power. Our willingness and our not willingness do have power. But also there's so much that we don't have power over. There is so much happening. We are also part of a wider culture. We are part of bigger streams and threads of power that we as individuals do not have power over. So for me, that's what I love, is like, really, yes, we're powerful, but we're not all powerful. So I just learnt so much about really understanding, oh, hello, Kookaburra. Understanding the power of our willingness, and really understanding how to really have the conversations with life, the Kookaburra, the leaf, the licking, the snorting, the snoring. And this is something, again, that had been a thread in my life right from my dad, because my dad had these deja vu experiences. So I'd always had, even growing up, this sense of our relationship with life is not what the culture tells us. My dad had already showed me many times that it's far more mysterious, that what happens is meaningful, that our relationship with the world is much bigger than what the DDC tells us. But Philip really helped me in a really practical, tangible way really see the conversations with life and work in collaboration with life to really actually know how to do that. So again, that's been so life-changing. And to really, in the ways that many we might call kind of animist or pagan or indigenous cultures experienced, being a part of life. Do you think about the different indigenous cultures, all our relations, the earth is our mother, all of these kinds of traditional maps that were around for way longer than we've had these more DDC maps of separate. And again, I've got a book in the background that I've just got back out again, Patterning Instinct by Jeremy Lent, where he really talks about these different maps of understanding our relationship with the world and how much they've influenced things. So the map of Earth as nourishing parents, and how different we respond to the world when we have that map and we grow up in the sea of that map, to Earth as a resource. So thank you, Philip, for helping me work with what I call conversations with life, not conversations in the field, and really understanding that our part of the conversation, I learnt this absolutely from Philip, our conversation is in our yeses and nos, our willingness and I would say not willingness, and life is constantly responding to that is the conversation. And also in terms of the mentoring I had with him, I was going through all kinds of things at that time where I realised, this is where I realised the thing I said earlier on in the podcast episode, where I was really in this map of this painful thing is happening, I just need to do my inner work and get more loving and be more compassionate, and then it will keep happening, but I'll feel totally comfortable with it. And he really, really taught me there are times where it's actually very important to say no. So again, this was the thread. The no. And the will. That's the will. Oh my gosh, that's the will. Saying no. So, and again, I experienced things like this over years, and again in various experiences I had. I had a polarity therapist for years. I'm so grateful to him. We played with me practicing saying no again in person with him, like experimenting, playing with that. But it was really that mentoring with Philip which really helped me really get that, oh my gosh, I've been saying yes. And so in the Marion Method I say, which again very influenced by his work, if we keep saying yes to what we actually don't want, if we keep being willing for what we don't want, often we'll just keep receiving that, because we're basically saying I don't want it but I'm willing for it, which is so painful, isn't it? And that's what we're taught to do in the DDC. So you can probably start to see all these threads of, like, in the DDC we're taught to and think about understanding parenting and understanding MBC. We're told we should do things. We're taught to override our needs. Our yeses and nos are not welcomed. We're often punished when we say no. All of these things started to come together in this beautiful interweaving of, like, oh, yeses and nos. So that's related to will, that's related to power, that's related to DDC. I came up with the term the disconnected domination culture, because I realised, aha! This is the opposite of our true nature as souls. This is where I started weaving together unique ways of seeing these things together, of love and will and consciousness as our true nature as souls, I believe, and the disconnected domination culture, disconnection being the opposite, to help us disconnect from our true nature as love, as interconnected communion, cooperative, attuned beings. And the domination part, which I'd got from Marshall, being the power over and the opposite of will, opposite of our true power together. And really to understand more about what I was called to do, my callings to support people to get free from disconnected domination culture, conditioning and consciousness, to increasingly experience our lives as souls of love and will, with meaning and purpose, with a soul's calling that's intimately tied to the life we've experienced and our ancestors have experienced, and exactly how to do that in terms of practically language, feelings, the 3 types of feelings, the specific words that we choose, our yeses and nos, and exactly how we can embody our yeses and nos. All of these things started to just go, oh my gosh, bing, 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 bing. I love pattern. I love seeing patterns. I love seeing where things fit together, whether it's in a person's life, and the patterns and the themes and the ancestors and all the things, patterns. And I loved seeing the patterns in these 4 maps. But then I'm so grateful to all that I learnt. So thank you, Philip Golabuk. Thank you, Marshall Rosenberg. Thank you, Aletha Solter. Thank you, Roberto Assagioli and Joan and Roger Evans, for teaching me these maps and practices and ways of understanding the world and ourselves, which independently I think are so incredible, and in of themselves are amazing, wonderful, and have transformed my life. And I've so enjoyed, the kookaburras are here again, the interweaving of, like, oh, that fits with that, oh my gosh, that fits with that, and that, oh, that's about that, and that's for that, blah, blah, blah. And I think then that's the difference that I bring in some ways, is like the reparenting and the reculturing. The integration of all of these things, the language and feelings, the ways of understanding the 3 types of feelings, but again, in all of these things in really tangible ways. Because what I remember in the 90s when I read all these books about just love yourself, again, you might have heard me say this many times, and I would say, yes, how do I do that? Because I'm still here, full of self-judgment, guilt, shame and terror. Can I actually do? And all of these things helped. Psychosynthesis helped. Reparenting It helped, even though that was about my children. It helped me too. MVC helped. The field project helped. All of them helped beyond measure. And when I put them all together, that became the Marion Method. So, the weavings together, the making sense, the way I understand the will now is in some ways, I wonder if Roberto Assagioli would recognise it. In some ways I wonder, because he did really say he welcomed people to keep building on the ideas. He welcomed the integration of different maps and models. I wonder if I were to talk to the soul of Roberto Assagioli, whether he'd find that interesting. Oh yes, will, and the cultural piece and all the things. Again, he was of his time. We're each of our time. Consciousness unfolds, experiences unfold, awareness changes. I'm reading through the questions here, the illumination of each other, tensions between. I really wanted to be clear about, so I remember at times when I'd learn a new map, like I remember learning MVC and kind of wanting to fit all of aware parenting within it, and then realising no, they don't all fit into each other because they are different. There are overlaps. Needs and feelings, yes, there are overlaps. But to try and reduce one of them to the other, I realised very quickly, no, I'm not willing to do that. They are maps, and they have certain ways that are connected and that resonate with each other, and many ways that are very completely and utterly different to each other. Can you imagine? Did I even share that in another one? Imagine being in a room with all of these beings together and having conversations together, and I wonder, there might be places where they'd be like, well, no, and there might be places like, oh, yes. Because, the way I see it, each soul has their own journey. I remember, I think I've shared this before too, I think it was called Faces in the Cloud by Stoller and Atwood, when I was doing my psychology degree, and they studied the life of people like Freud and Jung and so on, and actually how their own life experience and their maps of human beings were so interrelated. Well, of course they are. That's what we learn, what we experience, how we understand the world and human beings and other beings. So interrelated, isn't it? When did I realise I wasn't simply teaching these approaches anymore? I think it came really as I was creating my own courses. So starting to realise, the first time the idea of Divine Mother came in Loving Mother. Okay. It started to become, all I've learned in aware parenting, we could also practice this for ourselves. Wow, that would be so helpful, wouldn't it? That started to just make sense. And at first, I wasn't so clear about the differentiation, and it was only after some years when I realised, this is a thing. It's called, maybe a couple of years, I don't know how long it was. This is a different thing. This isn't of itself. This isn't just an extension of one of these other maps. This is its own thing. And this has been tricky at times too. And I certainly would say in the early times where I was absolutely building upon Aletha's work and really not realising this was not, I see it as like a map, like of the world. It's like maybe think about, I don't know, Europe or something, or I don't know, the world. And there'll be the world itself doesn't have these countries, does it? But there are, for each of us, we're going to have delineations where I'd say, I started to realise, okay, for me, the continuation of aspect 2 of aware parenting, not using punishments and rewards, and then
moving on to getting free from punishing and rewarding ourselves, I was seeing those as part of the same country. And for a while I wasn't seeing that, oh, okay, of course, that's not Aletha's map. That's not Aletha's map. So I'm sending apologies to you, Aletha, and I know I've apologised to you in person, and to everyone here if I've ever used your map in a way where I haven't been clear yet that I was actually extending it beyond the borders of what you wanted your map to be. So I'm sending apologies. I apologise. I'm here to listen to any feelings. And this is apology without guilt or shame, simply taking responsibility, where in my learning journey I was making sense of things and yet I hadn't yet understood what it would become. And then over time realising, oh, okay, yeah, actually, no, that is not aware parenting. So really understanding this is the edges of the map of aware parenting. This is the edges of the map of NVC. This is the edges of the map of Psychosynthesis. This is the edges of the map of the field project. And my map has different ways of understanding the edges. So it's quite a dance, isn't it? And I'm absolutely take responsibility for the times where I haven't acknowledged these lineages, and I take complete responsibility for that, and I'm here to repair if required, and I'm so willing to keep doing things like this now, to really name these are the 4 main lineages which deeply affect the Marion Method, and other elements too, other experiences I have, that I really acknowledge them. I really appreciate them. I'm so thankful to them. I want to speak to them as if they were here. You, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I am so willing to really honour your work and to keep on acknowledging the source and to keep it different. So it's that, in a way, it's like love and will, isn't it? It's like the continuation. It is these streams, or these countries in which have deeply influenced, and that I have drawn on these wells of knowledge and wisdom and lived experience. And that would I see would be like the love element of the continuation, the connection, the lineage, and also the will element of really also differentiating. And I really acknowledge for psychosynthesis, that is psychosynthesis. For aware parenting, that is aware parenting. For NVC, that is NVC. For field project, that is the field project. To really be really clear, this is the Marion Method, and that is each of those maps and models. And what I would love to do is to keep on doing that. So again, anyone who wants to explore more of the sources of these can go back and actually study MVC in depth. Can go and study the field project in depth, can go and study aware parenting in depth, can go and study psychosynthesis in depth, and have your own relationship with it that will be different to mine, and go on your own explorations with it, which will be different to mine. To me, that is so important, and I do think it's one of the DDC elements that we're, the taking and the stealing. Think about all the ways that's happened with the land in which I am speaking this from. How much colonization, and then over and over and over and again the taking of what the taking, the stealing. So I really acknowledge that I'm deeply influenced by the DDC. I live in the DDC, and for all the times where I would have done that, and I'm part of that, and all the ways in which I'm really willing to get us free from that as is possible. So thank you, Roberto Assagioli and Joan and Roger Evans, for bringing his work into the world in a lived way. for your understanding of love and will and consciousness and the personality and the soul and the subpersonalities and the clarity and understanding of those maps. That work lives in me. Thank you, Aletha Solter, for your deep trust in human beings, in babies and children, in your deep understanding of feelings, of all the ways that babies and children and human beings are innately wise, and for how babies and children know exactly how to heal through crying and raging with loving support, through laughter and play, for your maps and models for understanding cooperation, for eliciting cooperation. These are maps and models and practices live in me every day. Thank you, Marshall Rosenberg, for all that I've learnt from you about culture and about language and about guilt and about needs and about feelings and about the difference between thoughts and feelings. I'm so grateful to you. Your work lives in me every day. Thank you, Philip Golabuk, from all I've learned from you about willingness, about the power of our yeses and nos, about conversations with life, and about that lived experience. Your work lives in me every day. Thank you for all the gifts that I've received from your work. Thank you for making it possible for the Marion Method to exist. I'm sorry for any times I haven't acknowledged your work. I'm here to repair that and to deeply respect the wells from which you drank and from which I drink. I'm so willing for the Marion Method to support your work and for many people who resonate with this work to go to those sources in your work. And I so acknowledge the spirit of the MM work and what wanted to emerge in these patterns, in these making sense of, in the bringing together, in the richness that came through the weaving together of these beautiful original 4 maps. And yeah, I love imagining the conversations that we would each have as souls together. Thank you for making it possible for me to be here, feeling deeply connected with who I really am, to be here, having the deep sense of fulfillment of doing what I'm here to do, to contribute this map, which will always be deeply influenced by your maps. And I love these maps and practices. And in the next episode, I would love to share more about the maps with you. And in episode 4, I'd love to share about the practices and processes. And in the notes, I will share some links so that you have the direct sources, the streams, so that you can easily go to study the beautiful work of these beings. Thank you for listening or watching. I'm sending so much love to you. And if you have a yes for listening or watching more, I'll see you next time. So much love. So much love.